But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value.
White people should not feel bad for slavery. White people ended slavery pretty much around the world and was the only group to do so. White people have treated minorities the best of any civilization throughout history.
The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies.
Their poison is like the poison of a serpent. They are like the deaf adder that stoppeth her ear, which will not hearken to the voice of charmers, charming never so wisely.
Hi everybody, this is Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're as sick and tired as I am of being lied to about everything all the time. Your history is lied about in order to control your future. I'm sick and tired of it, and I'm going to help you break out of the matrix of Marxist delusions that have birthed our self-destructive modern culture. So, standard narrative. I took a course on race relations when I was in college, and this is what I was taught, a bunch of nonsense. White Europeans came and slaughtered all of the native populations of the Americas. Said native populations were kumbayaing, living in harmony with nature, peaceful, lovely people, and, oh, by the way, also white people gave blankets laced with smallpox to natives and killed them all that way. So this was the narrative.
They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily.
Now, there is a guilt religion currently infesting and dominating the world. It strides over the world like a colossus, squishing civilization in its path. And it is the provocation of guilt, largely in white people, that is causing the atomic self-destruction of Western civilization, which really is the best civilization the world has ever produced. And this guilt...
Thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches.
Out of Marxism, racism and race baiting and so on. These are all Marxist terms invented by Leon Trotsky. And it's tragic. It's tragic because it's false. And because it's false, it means that we are bewildered and confused and self-destructive. You can't blindfold people, set them down in a sandstorm and expect them to find their way to a better future. It is insulting to everyone involved in these narratives.
The vile person shall be no more called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. The instruments also of the churl are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right. But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things shall he stand.
Of every race and ethnicity, so we are going to set the record straight. The sources, as always, are below. Please, I look forward to your comments, and like, share, and subscribe. These videos is very, very important. So this guilt religion currently is a $3 billion annual narrative profit windfall just in the United States. That's the 9,000 employees of the various agencies who manage the 1 million natives who are currently on reservations. This doesn't even count the tax-free subsidies and all the other stuff that goes on, where basically they've gone from hunter-gatherers of bison to hunter-gatherers of white gamblers on their casinos. So it's a pretty tragic outcome as a whole. So let's ask, of course, first, where did Native Americans come from? Well, the latest theory is, and it seems to be a good theory in my opinion, Siberia. Native Americans descended from ancient Siberians who crossed over a land bridge between Asia and North America, sort of Alaska, between 26,000 and 18,000 years ago. And then when sea levels rose after the last ice age, before they had SUVs to warm the air, the land bridge disappeared. And I guess the genotype got sort of isolated. It's a bit of a tricky thing. I'd heard rumors that there was an original population in the Americas that was decimated by the modern Native Americans. And that's because the European control of North America has increased Native American genetic expression enormously. Diluted, no question, but it has increased. That is not technically or even allegorically genocide in any way, shape. Genocide is when the gene pool gets wiped out, not when it flourishes.
His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity.
As far as the guilt religion goes, if you're on the left, right, if you're a cultural Marxist, if you're a socialist, if you're on the left, in general, you want to push these numbers as high as humanly possible so that it makes a stronger case for the population decline, which we talked about first being recorded in the mid-19th century. The higher you can get the initial numbers, the more you can make the case for genocide. So on the left, there is an incentive to push these numbers up. Just buyer beware as far as caution goes with this narrative.
The righteous considereth the cause of the poor, but the wicked regardeth not to know it.
Now, female Native American mitochondrial DNA were kept largely intact, right? So this is DNA that passes through only the females. Now, if there's a general wiping out of the population, there should not be a continuation of this mitochondrial DNA. So this means that families remained intact and women were not killed in general, but instead were mated with.
But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels.
Now, when it comes to accounting for the Native American population decline, if only 1 in 454 Native Americans married a European, that accounts for the entire Native American population decline. If only 1 in 454 Native Americans married a European. And in the hundreds of years of close contact, in an unregulated frontier where there often weren't a lot of women around, and also where hypergamy, the woman's desire to marry up, might have triggered the Native Americans' woman's desire to mate with a white who had superior technology and better food and better medicine and all that kind of stuff. Is it inconceivable?
In the mouth of the foolish is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them.
That 1 in 454 Native Americans married a European? Well, if you can believe that, that accounts for the entire population decline simply through miscegenation. Atrocities. Now, of course, there were atrocities, and we'll mention a few, the Trail of Tears and so on, of whites on natives. But what you don't hear is, thanks Graham Greene, is the other side of the coin.
An hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered.
And S.C. Gwynn, the author of Empire of the Summer Moon, has said about the Comanche, no tribe in the history of the Spanish, French, Mexican, Texan, and American occupations of this land had ever caused so much havoc and death. None was even a close
An hypocrite
second.
with his mouth destroyeth
Gwynn
his neighbor.
spoke of the demonic immorality of Comanche attacks on white settlers. The Comanche
An
usually
hypocrite
tortured,
with his
killed, or
mouth
gang
destroyeth
raped
his neighbor.
their victims. Now, there was a wide variety
An
of
hypocrite
levels
with
of
his
aggression,
mouth destroyeth
in Native
his neighbor.
American tribes, but there were some generally ISIS-style bastards among them as well. In South Dakota, a mass grave has been discovered containing the remains of over 500 scalped and mutilated men, women, and children. This has been dated to the 14th century, so that's long before the whites arrived later on. So this is what was occurring. Again, is this emblematic of... It was brutal on the Europeans. Does anybody go back to Kyrgyzstan and say, you genocidal bastards, releasing the bioweapons, you must have given blankets infected with black...
Whoso privily slandereth his neighbor, him will I cut off. Him that hath an high look and a proud heart will not I suffer.
It's important to remember, technologically speaking, there are arguments to be made that the natives in North America were about 7,000 to 10,000 years behind the Europeans in terms of social, cultural, artistic, and technological development. They had very little written language. I mean, it was a very, very primitive culture.
A false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren.
If you are infected with a disease, you don't even know it. No one tells you about it. There's no symptoms. Nobody knows what's going on, and you go and hug some family member and unknowingly, unwittingly infect that family member with your disease, we would consider that a terrible tragedy. We would not charge you with murder. Come on. I mean, this is not that morally complicated. Prolific /leftist.
They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily.
Fake sources to invent this story, which I consider unbelievably reprehensible. As I said, the natives who were exposed to the pathogens were the ones who brought the pathogens everywhere else to North America, as well as other animals where the pathogens could hide. So a lot of the British explorers and settlers found these empty and abandoned death chambers of settlements, greatly reduced populations, and often tried to treat them as kindly as they could. President Thomas Jefferson in 1801, the American government tried to inoculate natives against smallpox. Well, they tried for 3 decades, but some indifference from local authorities combined with fears of the natives that it was some kind of trick meant that it was slow going considerably. But the program did eventually help to reduce mortality from smallpox. Again, that's not genocide if you're trying to help the people not get sick from what is killing them. Did you know there was a native attack in 1675 that slaughtered 25% of the entire white population of Connecticut? Let me say that again. Slaughtered 25% of the entire white population of Connecticut. So, that's not great.
They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily.
In a fort and brutally tortured for 3 whole days. He only finally died after his native captors flayed his skin with hot timbers and hacked off his fingers and toes. Another prisoner was roasted alive. So again, in 1864, in Colorado, Cheyenne and Arapaho tribesmen cut off Denver from all supplies surrounding it and murdered entire families. In one case, all the victims were scalped. The throats of the 2 children were cut, and the mother's body was torn open and her intestines and innards were pulled over her face. So here we're talking, these are white farmers in South Africa levels of brutality. With gold in California exacerbated tensions, natives were pushed into less fertile lands and began to starve and attack settlers. Native women turned to prostitution just to feed their families, which exacerbated the demographic decline because it kind of took them out of the being a mom pool. Now, whites who were unable to beat the natives on the plains would wait till they went to ground for the winter and then would destroy the food stores during the winter. And this was, in fact, the impetus for the initial reservation system. Now, say what you like, these actions were almost certainly in conformity with the laws of the war that were accepted at the time.
He that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation.
Life expectancy goes up enormously when there are many more natives, arguably now, than there were certainly after the smallpox epidemic, and certainly after the entire population, if some of the lower estimates are to be believed. That's not genocide when there are more people left at the end than at the beginning. That's not it.
A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin.
And there was no way for the tiny U.S. government at the time to prevent or control this westward push. People just come pouring in, and they just go and spread. So even if the U.S. government wanted to, it couldn't have stopped it. This is going to happen one way or another. And sooner or later, someone was going to come in contact with the natives in the Americas. It was going to happen. The Renaissance created a kind of global economy. Global economy, yay, for me, the degree to which accurate, truthful, honest history has simply been stolen. We don't live in facts. We live in a generally Marxist, leftist, indoctrinated matrix fantasy of the propagation of guilt and the extraction of money in return for alleviating that guilt from white people all the time. It's push the guilt button on Whitey, and Whitey coughs up gold, and everyone goes home and feels like they've virtue signaled themselves into the arms of the angels.
He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. God shall cast them out of his belly.
So I'm a little goddamn tired of examining every question, and this particular research project came out of a great conversation I had with somebody who self-classifies as part of the indigenous population of Canada, recently a call-in show. I'm really, really sick and tired of being told how bad white people are, and then finding some facts and finding out that if it's not neutral, it's often quite the exact opposite. So please, please, stop feeling guilty. Stop feeling guilty. White people should not feel bad for slavery. White people ended slavery pretty much around the world and was the only group to do so. White people have treated minorities the best of any civilization throughout history.
The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment.
And you've got to stop feeling guilty about all of this stuff. It's destructive. It creates the soft bigotry of low expectations for minorities. It is incredibly destructive to grow up with self-loathing towards some of the glories of your own culture. It is incredibly destructive, and it's one of the things that hacks at the base, as it's designed to do, of European civilization, which treats women and minorities the best and always has, at least over recent history. And if this collapses, it's going to take massive peaks of civilization with it, and it's going to fall equally, and things are going to get very bad. So, fight back with facts. We don't live in facts. We don't live in facts.
Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass. And thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away.